This led me to a very big study in mobile games that I never thought I would take. Hi there, welcome to Games Over Coffee Consulting. This is where indie developers will submit their games and I do my best to give feedback on their game design. Today we have an odd game. This is a strange submission. This game is called John Pork Prop Hideout, but it's been renamed recently to John Pork Game. I ask people to fill out a questionnaire when they submit games to me. The developer name on the Google link that they sent me is Marshall D. Teach, but the name that they gave me was different, so I don't know. I hope this is their game. As soon as I got the submission, there was a lot of questions in my mind. This led me to a very big study in mobile games that I never thought I would take. John Pork is a meme, or an upcoming meme, or a dead meme. I have no idea. I know it's a meme of some sort. It's this pig right here that has like a pig man face. As for the rest of the name, the prop hideout part, the game is not a hideout, and it has nothing to do with props. I think what this game is trying to do is increase their SEO because of popular games like Props and Hunters, or Hunters and Props, or something like that. Something with a hiding thing that has to do with props where you turn yourself into a prop. You don't do that in this game. And then the Hideout is a different game entirely. You know, this is really strange. A Hideout is actually a game that was made, I think, just to emulate the feel of a video, just to copy that style. So I guess that's where the Hideout part of this title comes from. None of which really matters anyway, because this game has actually been renamed to John Pork Game. The little user picture on here, the avatar picture, this is a mirrored version of another game as that dad that's chasing the baby. Strange. If the description is AI generated, it's not hard to tell. You can see like in lines in there that the AI is actually saying that it doesn't know what it's talking about. So that's weird. Usually when people submit games to me, it's specifically because they want feedback on a direction that they're going. Either that or they just want my thoughts on the game design. And this game, I'm not sure if it has a direction, and I'm not sure if it has any design, to be honest. The game seems to be basically a prototype. That's what it feels like anyway. I don't know if this was on purpose, and this is kind of the main subject for today. It has to do with mobile games and using tropes and deciding on a direction to take. At first I thought this game was a stealth game, but it's not really. It's more like an action game that has to do with, it's kind of like Frogger almost in a way, or Crossy Road for you younglings out there. You play as a baby and you're keeping away from these giant pigs that just look really scary. You're trying to cross the room in order to get to the exit. It's a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. I mean, not the gameplay. The gameplay is really easy. Like, I don't know, being a baby and like running, which was weird because you're a baby. Not to mention the pigs, I guess, are on their hind legs. Anyway, it's kind of nightmarish. The pigs are just patrolling the area, and basically you got to stay away from the pigs in order to get over there. It sounds pretty easy. However, it is kind of difficult for a myriad of reasons. The first of which, and the most obvious, these pigs have these little cones that are coming out. They're used in pretty much every stealth game. What they do is they represent, where the person is looking, basically. If you stay out of that cone, then you won't get spotted. But in this game, that's not the case. The pigs all have a proximity sensor that is much bigger than the cone itself. So even like you come up behind the pig and they just immediately turn around and start chasing you, which is kind of horrifying, to be honest. If you take a look at my main channel, I talk about this kind of stuff a lot.
I have randomly selected 3 emotions.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll design these emotions into a game that then you can...
These emotions cannot be designed into a game.
So the baby... It's just weird to say. So the baby comes up behind the pig, and the pig spots you, but not only do they spot you, they run after you, like immediately, without any telegraphing. They just immediately run. That's the kind of thing that made me think, okay, maybe this person doesn't really understand the experience that they're trying to portray here. This feels like a tech demo, or it feels like a concept piece that they just kind of put together and said, hey, these elements work together, I want to experiment, basically. It doesn't feel like a finished game at all. This is a perfect place to start. I think this is a great idea to make a game like this, to test out some kind of things that you're trying to think of, just to get out your ideas and kind of experiment a little bit. It doesn't seem to be interested in a single direction. I'm not exactly sure. There's only 6 levels in the game, and it takes around, at least for me, it took around 10 minutes to complete. The game is very simple, but it employs these kinds of mechanics that I feel like are taken from other games. There's this one where you touch a colored wall or you touch a furniture item, like a chair or a dresser or a cupboard or whatever. You go inside the object or something, or you touch a rug and then you sink down into the rug. very weird mechanics, but a mechanic like that is in Stealth Hero. Stealth Hero, I think, is a clone of other games. They're all clones of each other. But in Stealth Hero, it kind of makes sense because you're a ninja who goes into a bush, right? And so therefore you can't be seen. But in here, you're a baby who's going into an object. I imagine that's supposed to be, maybe that's the prop element of this whole thing. I imagine that's what it is. But in Hunters versus Props, you're supposed to turn into an object at will and then hide among other objects, as opposed to touch an object and then become that object. I don't know. When you touch walls, you turn into the same color as the wall. That's supposed to show you that you're now camouflaged for some reason, and pigs just can't see you anymore until you come out of the wall. Between there's basically just walls that form kind of a maze, but they're not really a maze. It's just kind of like a room that exists, and you have to navigate the walls and stuff. And what's weird about the walls is that they don't block viewing from the pigs, and they don't block the pigs themselves. Like, the collision is broken, so the pigs can see you through the walls and run through the walls to get you, which again is kind of horrifying when you're actually playing the game. This would make like a perfect horror game, honestly. Like, the mistakes in this game kind of feel like they're almost their own kind of existentially weird game mechanics. So like I said before, at first I thought this was a stealth kind of game, but it felt more action the more that I played it. When you're trying to avoid the pigs and you go to like certain areas to camouflage, because the pigs have such a large proximity sensor and they immediately run when they see you, your instinct is to run away, right? And there's a mechanic that the pigs stop following you after you get a certain distance away, so it's very much a chasing game. This game has to do with you starting at one area and trying to get through the pigs by outrunning them. That's basically what it is. You outrun them to a little safe area, which is those the walls or whatever, wait for the pig to go away, and then keep running, right? It's an action game. Because of these mechanics that are kind of just there in the game, they don't really feel like they're taking a direction. So I'm talking to the developer now. In the questionnaire, I asked you to provide me with what kind of experience you wanted. When you make a game, the player is having some sort of experience while they're playing that game. For example, in Minecraft, you would have like a peaceful exploration vibe, right? In Subway Surfers, it's an action game. You know, Mario, it's an action platformer type of fun feel. It's all about the vibe that you want to portray to the audience and what kind of experience you want to give them and what you're hoping to get out of it, basically. And that's more than just making it fun. Any single game can be fun. It doesn't matter what the mechanics are. I mean, we've improved that idle games can be fun, right? You almost literally do nothing and you can have fun. Almost any game can be fun. It depends on the experience that you're trying to portray. That's the thing that makes a game different from another one. So with that being said, I want to know what your focus is here and what kind of experience you're trying to give to other players, whether that's a puzzle mentality or more of an action mindset. When I say that, like, it sounds simple, but there's a lot more to it. Design gets so deep, game design gets so deep, and I don't want to get into the area where I'm saying game design is so important. You know, I do believe that game design is important in your game. It can make or break it, but at the same time, I don't want to put it in your head that game design is like this requirement that you have to do this kind of thing in order to have the experience that you want. I'm trying to leave this as open as possible and just pointing out the things that I see conflicting with the situation that I believe the game is. So I'm going to go over a bunch of different design things that I saw in this game, a bunch of different design conflicts. And at first I just want to do the basic good stuff, the stuff that I felt like was done pretty well. The levels of the game, set the way they are, have a basic understanding perfectly mapped, right? As soon as you open the game, there's no confusion as to what to do. There's a exit sign over the exit and a big old portal, and it looks different from everything else. Everything else is very color codified, right? You have good proximity principles going in your graphic design. All the pigs look the same. All the walls look the same. These are good proximity principles being put into practice. So that I very much appreciate. And it's very easy to make sense of the game as soon as you turn it on. The levels are not too arbitrarily hard. Sometimes they are a bit unfair. Whenever you see someone, say, making a Mario level on Super Mario Maker, you'll notice that a lot of new players will just kind of put everything into there, just mash a bunch of stuff because it's fun. But when they release it to other people get confused more than anything because they need a line to go on. They can't just look at all this mismatch of stuff and be like, oh, this is what I have to do. It's too hard to think about. In that sense, your level design is pretty straightforward, so I appreciate that. So that's that good stuff, basic stuff. I want to get into some level design stuff now. The levels are kind of strange. The furniture is a strange inclusion in this game because they seem to be just set in random places and don't seem to have any purpose. In fact, I didn't even know you could hide inside the furniture for quite some time. There's no like indicator telling me that their furniture is available to touch. It looks like set decoration to me. It just looks like it's there. There's no reason why I would look at a chair and think, oh, I can hide inside of that chair. Same thing with rugs. The rugs in here, actually, they don't even look like rugs. They kind of look like big play buttons. And I thought that they did something. I thought it was an actual button that I had to press down. And then I got even more confused when I went into it and my character sunk. I wasn't sure what that was when I hit it. And I wasn't sure if it was something that I could use until one pig followed me over there and I just accidentally went into one. And I found out, oh, it's camouflage. That's okay. More about the level design. The levels are built in a strange way. The level is built for verticality, right? Because you're playing on a phone. And because the camera is set where you can see everything in front of the character, it makes sense to have that kind of level in front of you. But much of the level is stretched out to one side or the other, which means that there's things that the player can't see and have to walk over to that area to see. And sometimes that area is dangerous, where there's pigs, going back and forth. And a lot of times that area has something that's in it, like a key that you need to open a door, but you don't know it's there until you explore and put yourself in danger. So it feels a bit weird. If you look at Stealth Hero, you can see that the whole game is very much constrained to one strip, and that's because the player can see everything as soon as they go into there. I'm not saying this game is really well designed, because I don't think it is, but it's good to show that the kind of level design is verticality thinking. Jesus Christ. I would say to think about that kind of space, since people are playing this on phones, to see that, you have to see everything in one big strip. These walls, I'm not sure what they do navigationally for the level. Like, the walls are meant to give a sort of, I feel like they're meant to give a sort of maze mentality to the place, to where you have to go discover things and then use, keys and stuff to open doors and whatnot. But the walls here don't have that many. I had to put my microphone here so my voice can be louder. So the rooms don't feel like they're made for any intention. They don't feel like they're made for any reason other than to just hold everything that's in here. The reason why that feels that way is because when I'm running throughout the place, there's no places that I feel like offer any kind of a discovery in a way. Like, there's this type of room right here where it's just a side attachment. They're just walls that are just coming off of the other wall. And I don't feel like they're there for any reason. Like, why are they there? And the other reason is that, the walls themselves don't actually block the enemies from crossing over. So really the only reason why the walls are here are to stop the player from going forward. There are some walls that I think feel really good, like this one that's in the center that the player has to go around. It separates the space intentionally, but I want to see more of that. A lot of times these walls are placed in really strange areas to where they kind of block the space for the player to be able to run clearly. Death is handled very strangely in here. Death is usually whenever you have a game that has, any kind of mobile game has some sort of fail state, you kind of have a pay for lives kind of system, right? And when you pay for lives, usually it makes sense because the gameplay took so long to get to that time, right? So for example, in a game like Temple Run or a game like Subway Surfers or even Peggle for that matter, there's a long bit of playtime before you die. You've covered so much space that you feel like, well, I want to be able to continue. And so you have a revive button to continue. But in this game, you don't really have any reason to revive yourself. None of these levels are very big, so you can get to almost any point in the level in a very short amount of time. So there's never any reason to revive. On top of that, the ads that you have to watch take more time than actually playing the game. Not much reward. There's not much return on investment. Keys and switches are kind of strange in here because they're the same thing. There's these switches that open doors, and then there's keys that also open doors. They don't behave any differently because if you go and hit a switch and the door opens, when you go get a key and you go to the door to the same, they're both the same thing. In fact, these two levels right here, one of them introduces a switch, the other introduces a key. They feel the same. They feel that they're the exact same strategy that's going on. So I'm wondering why there's even, that mechanic in the game. And then there's cash, which I feel like is just another mobile trope that's in here. Cash doesn't do anything. There's no, there is kind of a score that's kept on the top. And, score has been around in video games for a very long time. But before they were used in arcades like Pac-Man, for example, that just kept going and kept going, the person with the highest score would show on the screen, right? You could say that, hey, I got this far in Pac-Man so far that I got this many points. But in many mobile games, the cash or the gems or the coins or whatever it is that you collect is usually used for in-game currency, but this game doesn't use that currency, I don't think, for anything. Much like that game where you're a baby running away from the dad, the cash doesn't seem to have any purpose other than a vague, quantifiable sense of success. But you already have that with levels, so I don't feel like the cash is needed whatsoever unless you use it for something. And then we have ads. The ads in this game are very, very overdone. In my 10 minutes of gameplay here, 58% of that time was ads. I only spent 42% of the time actually playing the game, and it was difficult for me to even continue to play the game because the ads were so crazy. Where like the first level, for example, I would take maybe, 10 seconds to beat the level, and then watch an ad that takes maybe around 15 seconds. That's no good. Like the first time that ad plays, your players are going to just run off. They will never play that game again. That's one of those things about what kind of experience you're trying to do here. Ads can be forgiven by players if they think that the gameplay was worth it. Peggle, for example. Peggle has some very, very long levels. If you think about any infinite runner, the stretches of gameplay are pretty long. You're okay to go through 30 seconds of ads for, another 5 minutes of gameplay or whatever. But for gameplay that's like, 30 seconds and under, ads are just not worth it, right? Just not worth the time and effort at all. One thing I wanted to talk about was flow. When you're playing a game, this type of flow can happen to where you're focused entirely on the task in front of you and will do all you can to get forward in that task. And this happens in games that have very, very tight game loops. Games like Doom 2016, for example, everything in the game is directed toward killing enemies. So you kill an enemy to get health, you kill an enemy to get more ammo, and you kill enemies to go forward. It's just everything is based on killing enemies. And because of that, the level design in that game is very, very simple. That makes for a very good flow. Flow happens in games when you're focused, but it also lessens in games that you have friction. What I mean by friction are any points of the game that the player feels kind of taken out of the gameplay a little bit, something that was unfair. One of those points of friction in this game, besides the walls that allow the enemies to walk through, and besides the proximity sensors of the pigs, are the doors themselves. When you use a key and you unlock a door, the doors open toward the player, and they have collision. When they open, they knock the player back a little bit, and if you're in the middle of running, which you are doing a lot in this game, it can put you in harm's way, which is a point of friction, right? I don't want that to happen. So I kind of want to wrap this up in thinking about, again, the direction that you're trying to take the game. The game is very much using mobile tropes, but I don't know if it's meant to be using them for any specific purpose. The reason why we have a lot of mobile tropes is because kids, you can't see this in a lot of studies, but in fact, I just studied this myself. So if you look at the top 10 downloads of iOS, for example, at App Annie, you can see that a lot of the games are meant for kids. They're designed for kids. And then some of these games may not be designed specifically for kids, but are played definitely by a lot of children. And a lot of mobile game tropes come from taking advantage of kids because kids are stupid, right? Kids are young. They don't have a lot of impulse control. Another thing specifically about these types of games is that games like Minecraft and Roblox are just kind of exploratory games where kids can just kind of do things and not expect any kind of difficulty curve as they go, which is why games like this one where you have the dad and the baby, they don't provide that much of a challenge. In fact, this game I think has random levels. There are some levels that just take no effort whatsoever. But the idea here is that you can give that game to kids and they'll just play it, and thus continues the loop of people putting out games and seeing that they're doing really well because kids are playing them, and so they'll just copy and paste and keep doing that and creating tropes. Basically, because we have all these tropes, the things like cash, big cartoony buttons, big icons, tutorials that are every single level, these are things that we just don't need all the time. But it really does depend on the type of audience that you have. So if you are designing this game for children, it needs to be based on their expectations, and you need to somehow figure out why it is that you're making a certain experience for kids. Like, do you want them to have just a fun exploratory time? If, in that case, I would make the levels much bigger, right? Do you want them to have a problem-solving time? In that case, I would make the problems much smaller and stepped out more, maybe even literally stepped out with walls in between the challenges? Or are you even trying to make this for kids at all? Are you trying to make it for yourself? Are you trying to make it for people like me? Because I won't play this game. Again, figure out why you're making the game in the first place, what kind of experience you're trying to do, and then make that. I don't know if this is your dev account for the Google Play Store, but I've seen your other games, or at least the ones that were made by this dev, and the other games do seem to feel, they feel like they have a purpose, like a direction in mind. Specifically, I like the color one. You're it's a mixture of platforming. In fact, one of my favorite mobile games is called Chameleon Run, that uses the same type of mechanic that you have here. Again, think about the experience that you want to do and base all of your design on that experience and try to get it out. In fact, you could make this a very effective horror game if you think about it. Bending people's expectations like that and having quote-unquote broken design could make for a really interesting horror game. I have a Patreon, by the way. I have another channel. Go check out that other channel. I have a podcast. I have all kinds of shit. See you later. Thank you for watching. Bye.